Have you ever wondered if being good could be dangerous? Not in the way the world teaches you, not because kindness is naive or generosity foolish, but because the world has a way of twisting goodness into something it can use and then discard. George Orwell understood this, not through books, not through lectures, through life itself, raw, cold, merciless. He saw the silent traps, the invisible chains, the ways in which the purest hearts could be turned into instruments of power without ever realizing it. He lived it before he ever dared to write about it. And today, whether you feel it yet or not, you live it too. The paradox of being a good person in a world like ours is that the more you care, the more you are at risk. The more you see, the more you are targeted. The more you hope, the deeper the betrayal can wound you. But this isn't a call to bitterness. It's not a cry for retreat. It's a remembering, a waking up, a reclaiming of what it truly means to be good. Not according to the world's poisoned standards, but according to something deeper, something unbreakable inside you. Today, we will walk alongside Orwell. We will feel his doubts, his despair, his fire. We will see how the world breaks good men, not always through violence, but through subtle seductions, through soft illusions, through the slow erosion of truth. And perhaps, if we listen closely enough, we can find the strength to be good differently. To be good in a way that does not destroy us. To be good and still be free. Have you ever felt as though you're playing a game whose rules no one ever explained to you? You walk into life with a simple belief. Do good and good will return to you. Be honest and honesty will find you. Treat people kindly and kindness will flow back into your world. Yet somehow, reality rarely matches that innocent expectation. Instead, we often encounter a quiet, subtle pain. An ache, barely noticeable at first, until it accumulates into something heavier, a weight you carry. Inside your chest, George Orwell felt this weight. Not through abstraction, but deeply, personally. Born Eric Arthur Blair in 1903, in a distant corner of the British Empire, he stepped into a world of contradictions from the start. His family was caught between two worlds, wealthy enough to crave respectability, yet too poor to genuinely afford it. He watched his parents wear masks, pretending to fit into a world that quietly rejected them. He soon learned that life is rarely straightforward. Instead, it's composed of quiet whispers, unspoken judgments, subtle glances that define your place before you even have a chance to speak. How many of us today feel exactly that? Walking into rooms feeling we don't quite belong, smiling politely, while wondering if we're being silently judged. At school, Orwell found himself surrounded by wealthier children boys whose lives were paved with opportunities. He wore clothes that didn't quite match, spoke with words that didn't quite fit. He felt that unsettling sense of being slightly off. It's the feeling you get when you enter a conversation and sense that something unspoken lingers beneath polite words. It's that invisible rulebook, written not in ink but in gestures and silences. He saw clearly what others chose to ignore, that the world often rewards conformity, even at the cost of truth. Think about your own life. Have you ever felt you needed to hide part of who you are just to be accepted? Have you swallowed your opinions, softened your truths, smiled when you wanted to scream? Orwell learned early, truth-tellers are rarely rewarded. They're more often punished, quietly pushed aside, subtly excluded. And yet, despite knowing this, something in him refused to bend completely. He saw classmates earn respect through family names rather than merit, witnessed authority given to those who wielded power rather than wisdom. He noticed how easily people adapted to hypocrisy, smiling at those they disliked, agreeing with ideas they despised. He felt a quiet rebellion rising within him, not the noisy kind, but something deeper, a quiet determination to remain honest in a world that discouraged honesty. But honesty comes at a price. To speak truth is to disturb peace, to expose illusions carefully maintained by those who benefit from silence. The invisible rules demand obedience, and Orwell realized early that obedience often meant surrendering his integrity. This is the paradox that confronts every genuinely good person: the desire to live authentically, yet the constant temptation to yield to a simpler, less painful conformity. Because when you choose honesty, you become a mirror, reflecting back truths people prefer to ignore. Have you ever experienced that? Have you seen friendships quietly fade once you stop pretending? Have you felt loneliness deepen the moment you embraced your own authenticity? This was Orwell's early awakening, the recognition that truth isn't always welcome, that kindness doesn't always return kindness, and sincerity can sometimes isolate more than it connects. Yet Orwell didn't run from this realization. He carried it inside him, letting it slowly shape his perspective. He began to understand that real integrity, the kind that remains strong under pressure, is forged not in comfort, but in confrontation with discomfort. If you choose to be genuinely good, to speak truth, to show kindness, to maintain integrity, you must also be prepared to stand alone sometimes, to withstand quiet rejection, to face the subtle pain of misunderstanding. Orwell would eventually carry these early experiences forward into everything he did, not as bitterness, but as quiet courage. What about you? Are you willing to risk loneliness to remain truthful? Can you bear misunderstanding to preserve your sincerity? Because the invisible rules won't vanish, but maybe recognizing them is the first step to freeing yourself from their grip. Have you ever wondered why good intentions so often lead us into painful corners? Why doing what we believe to be right can sometimes trap us rather than free us? George Orwell understood this intimately. At 20 years old, still called Eric Blair, he chose a path filled with good intentions, one he believed would serve justice, uphold order, and make the world a fairer place. He joined the British Imperial Police, stationed in colonial Burma, convinced he could bring decency and fairness into an unjust system. But almost immediately, he realized the bitter truth. His intentions meant nothing. His uniform, his badge symbols he once thought represented justice, became instruments of oppression. Imagine his torment, the silent contradiction raging inside him. He had joined to help, yet he had become part of the problem. Every order he enforced widened the gap between who he wanted to be and who he had become. How often do we experience the same silent torment, believing we're helping only to find our kindness weaponized against us? Perhaps you've seen it in friendships, offering support until your generosity becomes expectation. Maybe at work, where dedication leads only to exploitation, your willingness to give twisted into endless demands. Good intentions become chains, not through malice, but through our blindness, our inability to see when our kindness begins to serve someone else's hidden agenda. In Burma, Orwell saw the painful eyes of local people who saw him not as a protector, but as part of a cruel system, just another cog in a ruthless machine. The kindness in his heart turned against him, used to justify actions he knew were wrong. He carried out orders that made his stomach churn, forced smiles to hide his growing disgust. He faced a profound truth we all must face eventually. It's not enough to have good intentions if we don't see clearly who those intentions ultimately serve. Because the world has a subtle, sinister way of transforming kindness into complicity. Generosity becomes expected. Sacrifice becomes demanded. Honesty becomes punished. Have you ever felt trapped by your own kindness? Have you ever stayed silent when you wanted to scream, simply because you didn't want to hurt others? Have you ever said yes when everything inside of you screamed no? Orwell began to recognize this pattern in himself. the self-betrayal hidden. Beneath good intentions, his ideals weren't freeing him. They were imprisoning him, locking him inside a life that contradicted every fiber of his soul. But this realization came slowly, painfully. Every day in Burma chipped away at his self-image. Each act of authority felt like a betrayal. And yet, he stayed. For a time, caught between wanting to do good and feeling powerless against the system. We all find ourselves in similar prisons. At some point, we stay in relationships long past their expiration date, hoping our patience will heal wounds we didn't cause. We remain in careers that crush us slowly, hoping loyalty will eventually pay off. We give endlessly, waiting for appreciation that rarely arrives. Good intentions can be a beautiful thing, but without clarity, they become dangerous. They blur our boundaries, silence our instincts, making us complicit in our own undoing. Orwell eventually faced the hardest choice of all: to remain trapped by false virtue, or to step away, to abandon security, status, and comfort, to reclaim his soul. He chose freedom, but not without scars. In walking away from Burma, he carried guilt, uncertainty, the heavy shadow of what he'd done and what he had allowed to happen. But he also discovered something precious: the courage to be authentically good, to refuse to serve any authority but truth itself. And here lies the heart of Orwell's warning. If your goodness requires betraying yourself, if kindness demands submission to injustice, then perhaps it isn't goodness at all, but merely compliance in disguise. Real goodness doesn't sacrifice integrity. It preserves it fiercely, even painfully. Orwell realized this, not through easy theory, but through difficult experience, through confronting the harshest truths about himself. Maybe you've begun to sense these truths in your own life. Maybe you've seen kindness become weakness, generosity exploited, trust betrayed. Maybe you've felt your intentions twisted, used against you until you no longer recognize yourself. It's not your fault. The world often weaponizes virtue, turning it into a tool of control. But awareness is your key to freedom. Recognize when your goodness is no longer yours, when it's being used against you. Because only when you acknowledge the trap can you begin to escape it. Only when you reclaim your intentions can they truly serve you and those around you. Orwell's escape from Burma was painful, but it was also liberating. It was the moment he stopped being complicit and started becoming genuinely good. What about you? Are your good intentions trapping or freeing you? Sometimes the bravest step isn't holding on, it's letting go. Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision, knowing that the next step would change everything? Knowing, too, that you'd have to take that step alone? Orwell faced exactly this crossroads after leaving Burma. He had stepped out of the system, but now stood facing something even more intimidating: the vast emptiness of his own freedom. Freedom, after all, isn't always comforting. Sometimes it feels like an open sky, beautiful, yes, but also terrifyingly vast and uncertain. To embrace freedom is to accept uncertainty. To choose authenticity often means accepting solitude. Orwell left behind a secure job, status, expectations, and illusions of respectability, trading them for the anonymity and hardship of a life without guarantees. Imagine the courage required to abandon everything familiar, to step into the unknown with no promise of success, no safety net beneath you. And yet, that's precisely the choice Orwell made. He immersed himself in poverty, not as a martyr, but to truly understand what it meant to live on the margins of society. He wandered through London and Paris, worked as a dishwasher, slept in shelters alongside the forgotten souls of the city. He traded comfort for discomfort, certainty for questions, stability for truth. This was his silent rebellion, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply courageous. Because courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in quiet decisions, in moments of gentle defiance against conformity. Orwell chose to walk alone, away from the well-trodden paths of expectation, into places others avoided. But in solitude, he found something extraordinary. He discovered the beauty of ordinary lives, the hidden dignity of overlooked people, the simple wisdom of those society dismissed. He began to see humanity clearly, without filters, without judgment, in all its vulnerability, pain, resilience, and quiet strength. Have you ever experienced this kind of awakening? That moment when loneliness stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like liberation. When solitude becomes a mirror, reflecting truths that noise had always obscured. In these quiet spaces, Orwell began to truly write, not just with ink, but with empathy, with honesty that only comes from living deeply and feeling intensely. He discovered that real wisdom isn't found in prestigious universities, but in the humble moments of genuine human connection. It wasn't the intellectuals who taught him about life, but the workers, the beggars, the tired faces in dimly lit cafes. This revelation reshaped his heart and his words forever. Yet the journey was not without pain, because choosing authenticity often means isolation. Have you ever felt that quiet ache of loneliness? The kind that settles softly around your shoulders, whispering doubts, questioning whether your chosen path is worth the solitude? Orwell felt this deeply. Each night in the shelters, each morning waking to uncertainty, each day wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. Yet beneath doubt, a voice quietly whispered, "This is right. This is truth." Maybe you've heard this voice too, softly encouraging you when others doubt you, quietly guiding you when everything seems uncertain. Because the truth is, genuine goodness requires bravery, the bravery to stand apart. The courage to embrace silence and solitude when everyone else seeks noise and comfort. It's easy to conform, to blend in, to follow paths laid out by others. But easy paths rarely lead to fulfillment, rarely lead to genuine wisdom. Orwell's courage wasn't grandiose. It was simple, quiet, and persistent. It was the courage of refusing to compromise, of remaining true to himself even when the cost was isolation. And maybe this is the courage you need now, the gentle strength to choose authenticity, even if it means facing temporary solitude, because solitude isn't forever. Eventually, it gives way to something deeper: clarity, strength, wisdom. Orwell's solitude became his greatest teacher. It taught him about human dignity, about authenticity, about truth, not theoretical truths, but living, breathing, aching truths of real people. And with this newfound wisdom, he began to write stories that would one day shake the world. What about you? Do you have the courage to face solitude? Do you trust yourself enough to walk your own path, even when no one else walks beside you? Because every meaningful journey begins alone. Yet if you trust your steps, if you honor your truth, solitude eventually transforms into strength, into quiet certainty, into an inner peace that no one can ever take away. This was Orwell's quiet revolution. The courage to walk alone, to find truth in unexpected places, to write words so genuine that generations later, they still echo in our hearts. Your own revolution awaits, in quiet decisions, in brave solitude, in simple authenticity. Do you hear it calling you? Orwell quickly learned one essential thing: speaking the truth isn't always rewarded. In fact, it's often punished. After returning from his journeys through poverty, he began to write openly about what he saw: the injustices, the lies, and the hidden realities that society preferred to ignore. He believed in the power of honest words to change things. But honesty came with a heavy price. When Orwell went to Spain to report on the Civil War, he witnessed something shocking. Newspapers openly twisted facts, turning real events into propaganda. He saw firsthand how truth was sacrificed for convenience. Imagine being in Orwell's position, watching brave soldiers labeled as cowards, seeing honest victories erased, and fabricated heroes glorified in the media. It deeply disturbed him. Orwell realized that speaking the truth didn't just mean fighting lies. It meant confronting powerful interests who thrived on deception. Have you ever tried to speak openly about something others preferred to ignore? Maybe, at work, at home, or among friends, you voiced a reality that no one wanted to face. If you have, you know how quickly you can become unpopular. People don't always want truth. They prefer comfort. And truth often makes us uncomfortable. Orwell wrote openly about political lies, injustice, and manipulation. And the more clearly he spoke, the more isolated he became. His honesty upset powerful people. His writings were banned, censored, or simply ignored. Friends distanced themselves. He faced rejection not because he was wrong, but because he dared to challenge comfortable illusions. How many times have you stayed silent just to avoid conflict? How many truths have you swallowed just to keep peace? Orwell's experience reminds us that honesty demands bravery. Speaking truth is rarely easy, rarely comfortable, and almost always comes with consequences. Yet Orwell believed that truth was worth any cost. He knew the alternative was worse, a life of quiet dishonesty, of accepting lies simply because they're easier. What Orwell learned, and what he urges us to understand, is simple. Truth is not negotiable. When we compromise truth, we compromise ourselves. Today, his lesson is clearer than ever. If you value honesty, be prepared to stand firm, even when it means standing alone. Orwell believed in hope. At first, he thought revolutions, new governments, new ideas could bring real change. He believed people could wake up, rebuild society, and live with fairness and freedom. But over time, he saw something darker. Hope, when blind, can become a weapon, a trap. During the Spanish Civil War, Orwell saw ordinary people full of dreams and hope, fighting for freedom. But he also saw leaders, once trusted, becoming exactly what they promised to fight. He saw how quickly ideals could rot into oppression, and it broke something inside him. He realized that hope alone is not enough, because hope can be hijacked. It can be twisted into loyalty, into obedience, into silence. When people cling too tightly to hope, they often ignore warning signs. They excuse injustice. They forgive betrayal. Have you ever stayed in a situation too long, simply because you kept hoping it would get better? Have you turned away from red flags, telling yourself that things would change with time? Hope can blind us. It can make us ignore reality, cling to promises that will never be kept. Orwell saw this clearly. Movements that began with noble dreams ended in censorship, violence, and control. It wasn't the death of hope that terrified Orwell. It was the corruption of it. Because when leaders realize they can control hope, they can control everything. Orwell's novels, like Animal Farm and 1984, aren't just stories about bad governments. They're warnings about how good intentions, how hope itself can be used to justify oppression. When we believe too much in leaders, in slogans, in grand promises, we become easy to manipulate. Hope without truth, hope without vigilance, becomes a prison we build ourselves. Orwell didn't stop hoping, but he learned to hope differently. He learned that real hope isn't blind. Real hope asks hard questions. It watches carefully. It refuses to follow blindly. Maybe that's the kind of hope we need today. Not the soft hope that says, everything will be fine, but the fierce hope that says, I will stay awake. I will stay free. Because when we hope with open eyes, we can still believe in change without losing ourselves in the process. After everything Orwell witnessed, the lies, the betrayals, the corruption of hope, he came to a powerful conclusion. Real strength doesn't come from governments. It doesn't come from leaders or slogans. It comes from ordinary people. From those who wake up early, work hard without recognition, love their families quietly, stand by their principles when no one is watching. Orwell fell in love with the simple, unpolished dignity of everyday life. With farmers who knew the seasons better than the politicians. With workers who carried invisible burdens without complaint. With men and women who kept living honestly, even when the world around them turned upside down. Because real goodness is never loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't need applause. It shows itself in small, stubborn ways. In the man who refuses to lie even when it would be easier. In the woman who chooses kindness over cruelty when no one would. Blame her for being bitter. Ordinary people carry a silent power that tyrants fear. Because they cannot be easily fooled. Because they remember what really matters, long after propaganda fades away. Have you felt it too? That quiet strength inside you. The one that doesn't need recognition. The one that simply knows what is right. Even when the world is confused? This is the true foundation of freedom. Not grand speeches, not revolutions. The daily, invisible choices made by millions of ordinary people. Orwell saw this clearly by the end of his life. He understood that no system, no ideology could ever fully control people as long as individuals kept thinking, kept questioning, kept choosing to live by their own quiet truth. You don't need to be a hero to change the world. You just need to refuse to betray yourself. You just need to keep that small, stubborn flame of honesty burning inside you. Maybe the most radical act you can commit is simply to stay human in a world that tries to make you forget. Orwell understood something that many people still miss. The real war is not fought with guns. It's fought with words, with ideas. With your mind. In 1984, Orwell showed a terrifying truth. That the most powerful form of control is not forcing your body into obedience, but teaching your mind to betray itself. Control the language, and you control the thoughts. Rewrite history, and you erase memory. Redefine truth, and you erase freedom without firing a single shot. Have you noticed how easy it is now to be overwhelmed by information? Confused by headlines? Exhausted by contradictions? This isn't an accident. It's a method. Because a tired mind doesn't fight. A confused mind doesn't question. A distracted mind doesn't notice when freedoms disappear. Orwell warned us that if you can be made to doubt your own memories, your own instincts, your own eyes, then you can be made to believe anything. You can be convinced that war is peace, that slavery is freedom, that ignorance is strength. And once that happens, you are no longer free. Today, the war for your mind continues. It's hidden in what you are told to fear, in what you are told to love, in what you are told not to question. It slips into the words used in politics, in media, even in conversations with friends. And the only defense, the only real rebellion, is to stay awake. To keep thinking, even when it's uncomfortable. Have you felt it? That quiet tug inside you, when something you hear doesn't sit right, when the truth seems twisted just enough to make you doubt yourself. Listen to that feeling. It's your mind trying to stay free. Orwell's greatest fear was not bombs or prisons. It was a future where people no longer remembered what freedom felt like. A future where people stopped noticing the difference between truth and lies. And if we're not careful, that future becomes our present. Freedom doesn't disappear all at once. It slips away quietly, hidden behind distractions, camouflaged by good intentions. Your mind is your last line of defense. Protect it. Question everything. Hold on to your ability to think for yourself, because once that is gone, nothing else matters. In a world that tries to reshape you, to mold your thoughts, to bend your spirit, there is one rebellion greater than any other. To remain human. This was Orwell's final desperate message. Not just to fight systems, not just to resist governments, but to protect what is sacred inside you. Because the real danger isn't that we will be conquered by force. It's that we will surrender ourselves voluntarily, little by little, choice by choice, until we forget who we are. Remaining human means keeping your heart alive, even when it's easier to go numb. It means refusing to believe the lie that cruelty is normal, that kindness is weakness, the truth is whatever the powerful say it is. Remaining human means feeling pain when others suffer, even when it would be easier to turn away. It means holding on to love, even when cynicism seems smarter. It means protecting your ability to see beauty, even in a broken world. In 1984, Winston Smith's greatest act of rebellion was not picking up a weapon. It was falling in love. It was remembering what it felt like to care, to hope, to feel, have. You noticed how the world sometimes teaches you to harden yourself, to stop trusting, to protect yourself by closing your heart. It feels safer, maybe, but it also makes you easier to control. Orwell saw this clearly, a population that forgets. How to feel deeply becomes easy to manipulate, because if you don't feel outrage, you won't resist injustice. If you don't feel sorrow, you won't mourn what is lost. If you don't feel hope, you won't fight for something better. Remaining human is not a weakness. It is your greatest strength. It's the fire inside you that no system, no government, no propaganda can fully extinguish. But you have to guard it. You have to fight for it, not with anger, not with hate, with attention, with kindness, with the simple, stubborn refusal to become less than what you are. Right now, maybe you feel tired. Maybe you feel overwhelmed. Maybe you wonder if being good, being honest, being kind, even matters. It matters more than you know. Because every time you choose humanity over cruelty, truth over comfort, kindness over indifference, you strengthen not only yourself, but the invisible threads that hold our fragile world together. Orwell's warning was never meant to paralyze you with fear. It was meant to awaken you to your own power, the quiet, unbreakable power of staying human when everything tries to turn you into something else. And that power is still yours to claim.